So here we go. Welcome to our next session of the fighting fan. We are on to our third class of working on the fighting fan. Last time we got together, we were just starting to work on some of the opening movements from the actual fan set. We're going to do more of that set now. And as we progress in the next few classes, more and more of our time is going to be starting to work on the choreography. I do want you, I'm telling you now, I do want you to keep up with those practicing of the basics. So each class, when we get together, the first thing we're going to do as part of our warm-up is just go through some of those foundational strikes and thrusts and parries and things that we've been doing, and then we'll start to add to the technique. Now, last time we were talking about getting used to stepping into hook stances. So we'll touch base with that again. We started looking at how to create an inside to 360-degree turn, because that's going to be part of the set. There's lots of good things that are going on. So we'll do a bit of footwork, we'll do a bit of fan, and we'll start to look more at the movements from the fan set. So as an ongoing reminder, remember that your grip needs to be set up so that you can strike with the edges of the fan. Sometimes once we get going in the set, the fan is moving around and stuff, and quite often what will happen is the fan will start to roll, and next thing you know, you're smacking with the sides of it again. So you really want to make sure you're getting used to that hitting with the edge. Remember that you want enough handle so that you can still strike and make your hammer fist style motions with the handle. There's also things you can do like hooking against wrists and stuff, or hooking with it. We'll get to those. And we want to be able to make sure if we thrust that we've got enough grip that we're not sliding off the weapon. And we need to be set up so that we can use the thumb to be able to pull the blade of the spine or the blade of the fan towards you, so that you can then pinch it between the finger and the thumb and release the rest of the weapon down. So let's go through a few things with the fan closed. We'll go through a few warm-ups with the fan open, and then we will do some footwork, and then we will look at some choreography from the set. So give yourself a chance here, just kind of loosen up. There's going to be a lot of wrist work, so let's roll those wrists a little bit and the other way. Yeah, let those arms just kind of go loose. I know a lot of people warmed up with some Tai Chi this morning, but not everybody. Good. Knees from the insides to outsides, just kind of loosen off a touch. And from the outside to the inside, a little bit up at the shoulders, up to the chest. Good. Up to the shoulders, up to the chest. Good. Okay. Just get a little bit of warmth in the body. So let's start out with our diagonals for our cuts. So this is where we're thinking about using the weapon like a single-edged knife. So we're cutting along that edge, and what we want to be able to do is cut down, turn it over, and cut back. So let's just go through like about 8 or 10 cuts from this downwards diagonal. So cut, cut. Now, you don't have to stay stationary with this. You could start to think about moving around, becoming active with those cuts. You can pick up some speed in those cuts. Good. Let's go to this kind of idea of rising diagonals from underneath. So anybody worked the sword set that we just finished up, these are going to be pretty common. It's going to feel pretty light with just a fan in the hand compared to working with the sword. Now remember, is that grip still got you in a position where you're cutting with your edges. Let's go to some horizontal cuts. So as you finish the cut, you're going to roll this over and turn your palm up and come across. You're going to roll your palm over and turn the palm down. So palm up as you cross the body, palm down as you open up. So again, you're cutting. Now these horizontals can be low, they can be up higher at the throat. That's it. So we're cutting a bit, just a few more. Get that sense of moving. Now let's go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Down, down, up, up, side, side. So that's a major, those are your major cutting angles and directions. And again, you could start to change your angles: down, down, up, up, side, side, down, down, up, up, side, side. So you're just kind of cutting, cut, 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 down, down, up, up, side, side. Snapping those around. Now, we also looked at basic hammering. So our patterns for the hammering kind of strikes, we're going from the outside and coming in. We're coming across the other way. So again, we can go palm up, palm down, palm up, palm down. So you're hitting with the handle now. You're smashing that handle in. Just a way to get your arms loosened up and to feel comfortable with moving the weapon around. We had down, we're smashing downwards. So we've got that kind of vertical. We didn't look at our vertical cuts. Down. We also turn this one over and we're hitting back with it here. So we're smashing back and up. That can be up towards the jaw, up into an armpit, into elbow, point loads on the joints. You could be hitting into the stomach, solar plexus area. So you can be coming down, you can be coming up, one side, other side. You can use your same diagonals for the cuts, and you can use those with the handle. And quite often, that's how you want to think about cutting. Handle to blade, handle to blade. So those same diagonal those diagonal cuts, or those diagonal strikes, can also be handle hits. You're striking in. We didn't cover straight verticals. So remember, you've kind of got your 8 directions. 1, 2. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're coming up from underneath. Now we're talking about with the verticals, you're either going to do those on the same side of the body. So here I'm cutting down on the same side of my body. I can also do verticals by crossing over the body to strike down. So you can get a vertical on the same side. You can get a vertical on the opposites, on the non-weapon side. So weapon side, non-weapon side, you got your verticals this way too. Up on the weapon side and up from the non-weapon side. So that gets us our 8 directions. It all comes sort of down to those, the bagua, the eight directions that we can strike in. Okay, let's also talk a little bit about our deflections before we get into a few other things. So we're talking about, again, we don't want to deflect with the flats and break the weapon. We want to hit with the edges. So one side, so this concept we've been talking about, a wall. You kind of put a wall to one side, and you can do your wall on the other side with the palm turned in. You can also do the wall on the other side with the palm turned out. So 1 and either 2, where you're just kind of hitting with the back edge, or 2, you can turn this over and hit with the edges on the other side. So you've got 1, 2, or 1, 2. 1, turn it over, 1, back of hand. So something coming in and we're catching, we're moving, we're deflecting in that upper. Now our walls can also turn over so that we can be working a wall down low, one side, on the other side, with the back of the hand, with the palm. So we're kind of making walls here dropping down. So you've got a wall that's up, you've got a wall that's down. You've got a wall that's up, you've got a wall that's down, or a wall that's down. You can turn that palm out, you can turn that palm forward, but you're still getting the idea of deflecting on these kind of sides of the body. We then had deflections that go like roof. so you get a bit more of an angle to what you're doing. So you're kind of putting this up and creating a roof angle on one side of the body and a roof angle on the other side. Now, one of the ways that this is described, I liked how the Filipino martial arts describe it, and I'm using their roofs and walls too, because I think it references well, is you are looking out of the attic window. So you're looking through the window. This is your block. As we turn this over, I'm looking out of the attic window. So I'm looking kind of through the arm, and this is my blocking area. So boom, boom. So I can turn those into roofs and walls. Now, of course, roofs and walls will then blend into cuts and hammers and thrusts as well. So let's go through the thrusts, and then we'll combine some of the idea of deflecting and striking. So the thrusts, we're going to have, the major ones we're going to see in the set are going to be a rising thrust. And last week we were talking about the gruesomeness of the rising thrust that turns into a pulling cut. So you're entering and then cutting and exiting. So you're creating bigger, more open wounds if you're talking about knife fighting. So we've got rising and we've got dropping. So we've got this kind of over and down where you're going to be going through in the collarbone area and the throat area, through the side of the neck, into the tops of shoulders and things of that sort. So you've got down, up, you've got straight thrusts. Straight thrusts. So this downwards idea can also be where you kind of spin and turn over the weapon and drive it into place, spin and drive. Now, I'm sure if we've got some people with a lot of Filipino knife fighting experience, they'll have a lot more to add to this than I have, but I'll show you what I know. So down and in, up and over and down. So those are our main thrusts. Palm up, straight, palm down, straightish, over and in, up and under. We can also come sideways. So we're smashing in with the blade, with the tip of the blade, and we can come back the other way as well. So we're hooking around and driving in with the blade. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thrusts, if we want to call it that. So straight thrust, rising thrust, descending thrust, coming in from the opposite side, so hooking in, hooking in. So we have all of those. We then want to also be able to combine those. So last week we were talking about the opening that combined a rising thrust with a pulling cut. So let's practice that for a second. So you're going inside here and then you're pulling through. 1, 2, 1, 2. I know you came to this thinking, oh, this is going to be lovely. I'm going to be playing with a fan. Why is this guy now grinding through and cutting people's abdominal walls open? So 1 and pull 2. We're going to get things like this, where we're going to get our deflections followed by cuts. So you get this idea, let's create a bit of a wall across the body, and then you could use your horizontal to cut across. 1, 2. You might create a wall out to the outside and cut. So 1, 2, or 3, 4. You might hit low here. Now this might be something that turns nicely into your hammering. So what you end up doing once you've got your hammering strikes, your thrusts, your cuts, and your parries and deflections, is that you want to, in outside of the set, you want to start to feel comfortable blending those and using your imagination about what might be working. A lot of the time, these ones that look like little checks to the side are also ways of cutting the insides of people's arms. So you might cut on one side and then turn around and cut on the other, boom, boom, and slice the insides of the arms on both sides, one side, other side. Then you might be thrusting. The idea with short weapon work is you don't want to spend much time in the defensive mode. You really want to turn it over in a situation, and just start being able to flow all of your attacks together. Okay, so that's something to work on your own time, because I'm seeing our time disappearing. Let's touch base with the opening and closing of the fan that we did last week. So we had two ways we were going to do this. One was kind of on this vertical plane, where we were kind of pulling through on the fingers and dropping down with the weapon. Now, this is where we were talking last week, that once we get the weapon open, there's going to be a moment of fiddling around where you reposition your hands. So once you open it, you need to then think about getting a grip. Get a grip, lad, on the spines of the fan, so you can be able to kind of swing the fan around without the fan closing. So those same arcs that we are working on for the cuts get done with the fan open. So we can be arcing one way or the other. That's it. Now, one of the main ones we're going to see, or one of the ones we're going to see and hear a lot, is this, where we're going to cross the arms and we're going to bring the fan up and over. And this one, in my opinion, is a lot of distraction work, where we're talking about how the fan becomes a way to draw the opponent's attention away from the strike, away from the striking. So we want to be able to kind of cross, open, and out. And this is pretty typical of Kung Fu movements in general, these kind of circular motions. We're also going to get horizontal thrusting, where we're driving. And this is where, if you had a more solid metal fan with edges on your spines, you could be driving that in. So we'll have diagonal cuts, we'll have cuts and over the head. We will have these more horizontal style cuts, and then we'll have thrusts. The main two thrusts we're going to see in the set are going to be palm up, and then this interesting one where we're going to spiral and thrust with palm sort of down to a 45. So we'll get these straight thrusts, but then we'll get these times where we turn it over and we come in from another angle, and then we might straight thrust again. So these are just getting comfortable with kind of moving the weapon around. So you're cutting, you've got horizontals, you've got thrusts, and then you want to close the fan. So you kind of flick the wrist up and release the rest of the fan and let it come back into your hand. Now, you almost want to make sure that you're letting gravity do some of the work. So notice how I'm tipping this over quite a bit so that gravity can do a lot of the work, and I'm set up in a position where I could cut again or hit again. So I'm not trying to close the fan in front of me to get underneath it. I'm going to, in the set, have my hand up, and I'm going to flick it back and get my grip again so that I can start to get into my cuts and thrusts. Now, the second version, oh, time flies here. The second version of opening the fan that we were working on last week was the horizontal, where you're coming across the body, and just as you kind of pass the body, you're going to get that pull with the thumb as you cross the body and release the fan. Now this one is like, you're a ultimate frisbee player, you're getting ready here, you hook it around the body. So that means I'm making my hand transition to pick up the weapon properly. As I pass here, I'm going to let the weapon pass, and I'm going to adjust my hand because I want to be able to come out with those double cuts. I'm going to do a rising diagonal and a falling diagonal. That's what's going to happen in the set. So we'll get used to that. So we're going to go across. We're going to make that shift in the hand so we can go up and out and over and down. So I've got to turn that over. So watch my hand positioning here. I'm going palm up to cut. I'm then coming kind of over my head and I'm going palm down as I cut the other way. So I've got a rise and cut, turn over. So if I didn't do too much flash, I'd go up, turn over and down, up, turn over and down. After a while, your hand cramps trying to hold everything open. So 2 diagonals, 1, 2. Now this will eventually be sort of coming over the head and down. So we'll open up this and we'll come around, down, and thrust. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get into those moves. So you can put your fan down if you want to. You can just hang on to it. Let's work a little bit on some footwork before we jump into some of the choreography. So one of the things we're going to have to get used to in this set is the hook stance, which is a big part of Choi de foot. So there's going to be a lot of movements where we're going to go hook stance, lift, horse stance. Hook stance, lift, horse stance. And this will be a common theme. 1, 2, 3. Now in the set, we're going to end up with a position where we're kind of stepping and setting up for things like thrusts. Some of those straight thrusting techniques we were doing earlier. So hook, lift, horse. Hook, lift, horse. Now hook, lift, wind, up, thrust. So in the set, we're going to do this all from right hand because that's where our weapon's going to be. So we're going to end up with this sort of, for those who do the internal work with me a lot, this kind of winding up and setting up of the waist. So if I was set up to you on my lateral, which a lot of this set is going to work from as a lateral position, because a lot of the theory was to get a lot of the organs out of the way. If I want to thrust straight, notice how I don't have a lot of potential power behind that. So I find the power, and I also get this idea that I'm checking with the other hand. So I go check, thrust, check, thrust, check, thrust. See this kind of moving in here. You're tapping something out of the way. You're driving with the other hand. Now, to set that up with the footwork, what I might end up doing is checking as I step into my hook stance and then lifting and thrusting. So this we're taking it out of context of the form right now, but I want you to feel comfortable with that movement because it's going to happen over and over again. So 1, 2, 3. So you get that feeling of step behind, a lot of work in the waist. Turn, I'll come towards the camera a bit here. 1. See the setup? How I'm setting up the weapon. Here's the potential for side kicking and then thrusting back out. So we go 1, 2, 3. That's it. I'll get my back turned to you here for a second. And 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And you can feel that wind up and blast, wind up and thrust. Okay, how are we doing? 5 minutes. Oh my goodness. So let's let that be something to work on. So the nice thing about the archive is you've got time over the week, jump back onto a lesson, have a look at, I've thrown a whole ton of basics and cuts and things at you that you want to be comfortable with. So come back to them and work them over the week if you can. So opening of the set. Opening of the set is going to start with us in feet together, much like a lot of the traditional sets. There's the philosophy at the beginning of a set of the preparation of the mind for combat. And the preparation of the mind for combat is, I really need to just calm down as much as I can. There's going to be enough stuff stressing me out that I don't need to go into combat already in a state of agitation, because all that's going to come from the adrenaline and things that go on anyway. So what we want to do at the beginning of a set is we want to learn how to calm down in the conflict. So you take a moment And you kind of just center the body, center the mind is the philosophy behind it. And from stillness comes motion. So our first movement is going to be a rising central cut, a hammer to the back, and a cut down. So the motion in the arm is we're going to pick up with the hands. We're going to kind of curve this in. We're going to come with a thrust, a rising cut, and a backwards hit. Now that's all going to happen as I step into a hook stance. So I'm going to pull up those arms. I'm going to roll through. Notice this hand's kind of sneaking in here so it goes into the stinky thumb technique. Thumb in the armpit, and we hit down. So if I was doing that from my central presentation I had to you, I'm going behind me with that first hit. My right foot is turning at 90 degrees. I'm turning the body, so I'm going, we were talking about how hook stance allows us to go to the lateral. So I'm turning to the lateral and hitting behind me. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to come across the front with a rising thrust, up inside. We're going to turn that over, and as we turn that over, we're going to go up into crane, and we're going to punch. So we've got the weapon, I'll step back here, the weapon over my head, and a punch. So I started facing forward. I then struck behind, and then I went 90 degrees to the left, and I'm moving towards the left. I'm going to do that with my back turned as well. So this is kind of a little bit easier to follow with. So we're going to go lift and strike back, come across low, stabbing up, cutting through, punching out, and we'll add another piece here. We're going to step into a forward stance and parry, and then we're going to thrust down. So we're going into a deep forward stance at that point. So we're stepping right in. So I'll do it with my back turned again. And we have pull up, curve in the wrist, step to the hook and wind up. So I'm kind of in the center of my body. I come over and strike down. We're going to come under, come up, punch out, shuffle in, and strike down. Nice. Let's do that one more time. We won't take it any further today. We'll get into that first pass next week. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So down and in. 1, 2, under, up. See that waist wind up? I'm winding up the punch. Punch and crane, parry, and thrust. So we've got this hand turned over and it's spiraling in. Remember, we were doing our rising and dropping thrust. So we're spiraling that down and inwards. And you've got a little bit of a sort of a parry or a moving out of alignment. So you're getting out of the way and thrusting down. So our first hits are a rising thrust and down. We then follow that again, a rising and pulling, and then we're thrusting down and in. All right, last time for today, and we'll let it go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're coming down and in here. And I'll get more specific about the footwork as we go on that opening movement. We're going to kind of end up stepping into those hook stances as we get going there. All right, we'll leave it for today. Don't scare anybody too hard, threaten them with your fan. I don't want to hear reports of, Madoc Amarma of gangs of fan fighters, threatening people in the streets. All right, thanks for training hard. And go ahead. I'm going to shut off the recording. If you have any questions, stick around. I can help you out with some of that stuff before we finish today. Thanks for training hard.